10 years ago, MLB was in a battle with boomers who thought that if you dropped your bat with any amount of gusto after hitting a home run, you justifiably deserved to be physically assaulted with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball to the ribs. And now today, based on the reactions to the 2026 WBC, people believe you should be spamming emotes your entire way around the bases after hitting a home run. In defense of the boomers, I just want to say that before Ohtani, they were the only ones keeping MLB alive, and the young ones are growing the game today, so you can't really have a huge problem with either of these views. A quick disclaimer for any boomers if you're watching, I'm about to use the words vibes and aura so much in this video that you might want to click away right now. Okay, so vibes have come to the forefront in the 2026 WBC. Based on the reactions I'm seeing on social media, people believe that the vibes are absolutely immaculate for the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. The vibes are pretty great for Mexico, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Nicaragua. It's fun to watch Australia, Venezuela, the Netherlands, Panama, and the Czech Republic. And then it's just fine to watch Colombia, Israel, Brazil, Canada, UK, and Italy. At the very bottom, you have literally the USA. Ever since the start of this WBC, people have been on the US. The overall sentiment is that they're just kind of boring to watch. Their celebrations aren't fun, and they don't seem to be having as much fun as teams like the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico. Another common thing you'll see is that they think the US just does not care about this WBC and that they couldn't be bothered to put any effort in. People are taking issue with some of their celebrations, such as the outfield celebration where they get into a circle and salute each other, which is not that fun. On top of that, people are bringing up how this is kind of a military celebration and that that's all that US culture revolves around. This is kind of valid, I guess, for a salute, but I mean, this is kind of only the case because the US has a formidable military, whereas a country like the UK can be in redcoats and nobody's gonna care, and rightfully so. By the way, I am 2 for 2 on jabs to Brits during these videos. Please no hate mates, it's just jokes, it's friendly banter. But in defense of the salute celebration, I genuinely cannot really think of any kind of American celebration that you could do that represents everyone in the country. Like, what is something you could do that someone with California and Alabama and New York and Wyoming would all agree to or identify with? I don't really know. That's a genuine question. Let me know in the comments. At the same time, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that represents the country because, I mean, you look at Mexico and the difference between those two celebrations, and yeah, it's kind of obvious. It just looks way less cool. I think everyone can agree, though, that the US has not been super hyped during the WBC, but I think this basically just comes down to competitors, vibe mathematics, and culture. Competitors has been the biggest one for me. Like, if you look at the lineups of some of these teams they've played, the roster literally looks like who you would find in your local gas station. Between the ages and the professions these people have, if I walked into my local Circle K, it would look exactly like some of these rosters. And while it may seem kind of boring to not celebrate much, at the same time, it feels kind of wrong to celebrate off of some of these rosters you're playing against. These are the best players in the world playing teams like Brazil, who hardly made the qualifiers this year. If people on social media had it the way they wanted, this is how Aaron Judge would celebrate hitting a 550-foot home run off of some Brazilian peanut farmer who's 48 years old and just threw an 82-mile-an-hour fastball middle. The next reason I think for the lack of celebrations has to do with vibe mathematics. So I'm about to drop some serious quantum vibology on you. So if you are not mathematically inclined, this may not be for you. You need to understand 2 equations that I've made, which I think explain this whole situation. The first equation has to do with aura requirement, which is winning minus expected outcome equals your aura requirement. So to take some examples, first we'll look at Taiwan. Winning, we'll just say that's a 10. The expected outcome out of 10 for Taiwan was maybe a 3. And so that gives you an aura requirement of 7. Doing the same thing for the DR, you'll give them 10 minus, let's say, 8 out of 10, and that's a 2 aura requirement. The US, on the other hand, that's a 10. They're expected to win this, and so they have a 0 aura requirement. The next equation you need to understand is that vibes is equal to actual aura minus aura requirement. So taking the values from our previous calculations, for Taiwan, we'll give them an actual aura of 9 out of 10. Subtracting the 7 aura required gives them plus 2 vibes for the team. Doing the same thing for the DR, we'll give them an 11 out of 10 for aura, and then minus 2 for aura required is plus 9 vibes. If you want to give the US 0 aura, that's fine because they have no aura required. So that comes out to 0 vibes, which is not in the negative, which is what you want. By the way, I think this is the case on player by player basis too. If you look at someone like Ohtani, you might think of him as the aura farmer he is now, but us Angels fans remember him in the early days. This is not a joke. I remember pregame interviews with some of Ohtani's teammates where when they described him, two things that they mentioned is that he keeps to himself and he plays Clash Royale. That is literally me. If you were to body swap Ohtani and I while he was in the clubhouse, I do not think anybody would notice unless they looked at our screens. So as long as you're not in the negatives, I would argue vibes don't matter at all other than for watchability. Lastly, we come to culture, which in the US is completely different than some of the Latin American countries or in Asia. You have to remember, things as simple as bat flipping were huge in Asia and Latin America. Like 30 years ago, it was not an issue in those countries. Not even 15 years ago, people still had issues with like pretty minor bat flips in MLB. There's that aspect of the culture, but I think another thing is the US is trying to bring final boss energy to this WBC. Japan, as talented as they are, kind of shocked everybody when they won the WBC in 2023 because the US put together a pretty solid team. There were still some excuses you can make for Team USA, mostly around pitching. This year, all those excuses are used up. So the US is trying to come in with the energy that, yeah, of course we would win if we had a fully stacked team. And until they're proven otherwise, I think the way they're acting is pretty appropriate. Obviously, things change once you play more competitive teams, but things are just kind of different for American players. And none of this is to say that any kind of style of playing baseball is better than the other. You could argue some is more fun to watch, and I would agree with you, but just seeing the difference is one of the cool things about the WBC. All those fun things melt together when you're in a league like MLB, where you have players from all over the world playing on the same team. But when you have players grouped by country, that's when these kinds of differences stick out. If you're the kind of person that thinks that vibes do matter in a game, let me know. And let me know if you agree with the standings I made for the Vibe War.